Hello, everyone. It's Jerry at the Fledge. Welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. And I'm up in my office again. Got my headphones on, brown hair, brown eyes. I'm wearing a shirt by Jeremy Hurt that I traded for Fledge coin. And yeah, another episode, another great episode. So today on the show, we've got our great friend, Peter Reeves. How you doing, Peter?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, thanks for having me on your show, Jerry.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show. I I've been wanting to talk to you on the show for a while, and we crossed the halfway point, and I've said I'm running out of time. I got to
Yeah.
get Peter on here.
No, I appreciate it.
So let's start with you. Will you tell us a little bit about yourself, like born and raised and all that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm not sure if everyone can tell from my accent, but I'm originally from Canada. I grew up most of my life in Ottawa, and then I went to school at the University of Waterloo, which is a school in Ontario. And then after that, I moved to Vancouver to go for the good life.
Yeah.
Vancouver, yeah, I don't know if people know it, but it's a really great city. It's really vibrant. So I went there, and I actually worked there for, I think it was 7 years. So I was what's called an ergonomic consultant. So I'd go to workplaces to try and prevent injuries. And I had a couple contracts, one with forestry, which I ended up working, in pulp and paper mills and then sawmills. So it's a great experience because you get to go to all these places to see how things are made, like how is paper made, right? And then it was a good experience. So, being on the front line, like trying to prevent things like back pain, I realized there were some questions, that I had personally, on how to do things better. So when one of my contracts finished, I decided, I think I'll go back and get a master's, and I did that. I went to Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, and then completed that. And then I got the bug, I guess, for research. I really enjoyed it. So I was fortunate to hook up with somebody I kind of knew from my time at Waterloo. He was at Waterloo at the same time, and his name's Jacek Czołicki. So he was at Yale University, and he was doing a project in the same area that I was interested in for my master's. So he was really gracious and invited me to come out and work with him on this big varsity athlete study. It was actually so he tested 300 athletes. So it's a lot of testing. But I really enjoyed it, and then I thought, I think I'd like to get a PhD. So I talked with Jacek, my mentor at the time, and then he sort of supported me going there. So I ended up enrolling into the Department of Biomedical Engineering for my PhD, and then I completed my work in spine biomechanics. And then at that time, Yale was like one of the top places in the world for spine biomechanics. They had this guy, Dr. Punjabi, who is like the pioneer, right? So it was just a great environment, I really enjoyed my time there. So yeah, it's kind of my background. And then after actually Jacek, my PhD supervisor, got a job offer at Michigan State University. So he asked me if I'd go with him and then help set up the lab. So I did that, and then when I was at Michigan State University, they offered me an assistant professor position. So I did that and did that for a few years, and yeah, it was kind of good. But then I don't know, I kind of miss being on the front line. I think there's some value, and we could talk about this maybe later, for researchers actually to get out of the building, right? And get back in touch with the people that they're trying to have an impact with. So for me, that's one thing I found I thought was lacking. I sort of lost connection with the people that I was trying to help. So we had this large back pain study through NIH, and we were running these randomized clinical trials, so we had to be blinded. So I just don't like it, right? Because I can't talk with them. I can't ask them anything about, how'd you injure your back, this sort of thing. So as a researcher, you get further and further removed, sometimes from the problem, which it's not a good thing. So I decided, I was in a good position, that I could take a risk and become an entrepreneur. So I thought, well, I'm still a researcher at heart. I love research, but I can do research which is looking at translation. So I thought we had a lot of good ideas from the lab, that could be potential good clinical solutions. So I went out and pursued that, and then went after SBIR funding, Small Business Innovation Research funding through NIH, and I was lucky to get a grant. So that started it all with the company.
Yeah. And that company was IO Balance, is that right? Or
The
was that
comp-
before?
no, so I think it was IO Balance initially, and then I changed it to Sumaq Life. So those are the two companies. I just changed the name because I like the name Sumaq Life better.
Yeah. Um, I wanted to ask you a question, but since you said that about Sumac Life, what's that mean? What's it mean, and what's it mean to you?
Yeah, so Sumac is a Quechuan word. So my wife's Peruvian, and then we go to Peru quite often. We were just there actually not too long ago for 3 months. Um, so Sumac is a Quechuan word which means beautiful or healthy, has healthy connotations. So my stepmother, she gave me this nickname, Sumac Nyawi. So it's a joke. It means like beautiful eyes. Like she was always like giving me a hard
Oh,
time. But yeah, so I thought, oh, I like the name Sumac, and it would be maybe good for the company name. So we end up changing IO Balance to Sumac Life.
yeah. Did and then you got the SBIR from NIH. Is that the one that we did the ICOR with you?
It was, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when you get these grants, like I really like the SBIR projects because they're really focused on, having something that's a viable solution, right? So this is the thing that I learned. So as a researcher, you think, oh, like this, the thing we got funded for was some work with colleagues in the Netherlands. And, we developed this really sensitive balance test, which overcame, one of the limitations with clinical balance tests. They're not very sensitive. They can't pick up impairments very early, so you can't initiate early intervention. So we developed something, and we showed, it was hypersensitive. It was really good. So, I'm thinking, it should get adopted, and
Yeah.
but yeah, that's the thing. So it forces you to actually figure out, the translation pathway. And what you do is as you know, like it's your world probably more than mine, you just interview people, like you identify who are the stakeholders, that have potential to have influence over the adoption. And then you go out and you do a bunch of interviews. And it's a lot like research. You test hypothesis, like, oh, I think people will pay for this. And then you go and ask them, is this something of value? And they say, yeah. Usually they sometimes lie to you. So
Uh-huh.
that's kind of the problem actually with the interviews. But what you could do is you say, okay, what have you done in the past? Like you try to find a behavior that's similar, right? So have you ever paid for a subscription, to monitor health or, that sort
Yeah.
of thing? Yeah.
So, you said back when you were doing that, research where you had to be double, triple blind, and you were getting farther and farther removed from the problem. Once we were at ICOR, that's all they cared about us working on, right? Was customer interviews and that migraine headache.
Yeah. No, and as you remember, like that was an intense course, right? So
Yeah.
it was they had us in San Diego, so we go to San Diego, and you're full of energy. Yeah? You get off the flight, and you're like, okay, this is going to be exciting. They tell you ahead of time it's going to be hard, right? But you don't realize. Like, so I think that I enjoyed it. I really liked it, but I'm not sure if you remember, there was a couple people that bailed.
Yes.
They thought it was too hard. They're like, it's
Yeah.
not. But like that first week, the first 3 days, I think I slept 4 hours the first night, 5 hours the second night, 6 hours, the next night. So everybody's heading back from the boot camp or the kickoff session, right? And you get to see everybody's like exhausted, but it's a good feeling, right? Like, it's kind of a challenge. So, but I think our team did really well. Of all the teams in the cohort, I think we exceeded
number one.
We finished number one with the most interviews, and I think as a team we worked really well together. We had Connor Boss, you remember, who was with us too. Yeah. Connor's a great engineering student, super bright guy, right? So I think part of the success of the I-Corps is just having good cohesiveness with the team members, and then everybody working hard to get the interviews. But it's stressful. It was an 8-week program of high stress, right? And then when you're done, you're like, oh, thank God. Yeah.
So, we worked a lot with the business model canvas in that I-Corps. And I always thought it was tough to manage it with their software. Strategizer. I'm giving a shout out to this software, strategizer.com. Man, you can put all your hypothesis in. You can collect your data. It's amazing. I'm going to send you a link.
Can you store the interviews in there?
Yes.
Yep. That's good. That's one thing I struggle with. I think with the I-Corps program is just we do all these interviews, and then how do you synthesize the data, right? So that was one thing. Yeah, I kind of struggled a little bit. And then with the business model canvas, I think it's good. It kind of walks you through the different components that you have to identify to see if your commercialization pathway is viable. But I found I was kind of tripping a little bit on just terminology and but I imagine it's something you get better with time. But I'm always doing them now. Every time I have to come up with a project, I'll go through the business model canvas and just do something quickly, right? Just to kind of reinforce what the markets are and what the product, the value propositions are, the product market fit part. But I do that quite a bit now. And part of the world is just using the same terminology, right? So people know that you know what you're talking about. So it's different than researchers, I'll tell you that. Yeah, it's a lot different.
So that I-Corps that I went to, and sorry if we're spending too much time on this, but the I-Corps that I went to with you is one of two major events that I experienced with you that changed or solidified maybe the course of the Fledge. I want to tell you that I-Corps meant a lot to me. And I learned a lot, and I loved working with our team. I love seeing all the other things. I'm still looking for a copy of that Ebola video.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, they're pretty good. They try to encourage you to have a little bit of fun with it, right? So there's some teams that were really, they had a little bit more fun than we did, I think.
Yeah, we got to take a quick time out. Ebola is not funny. It was a farce that they did with the whole national or international aid for Ebola, and that was a very funny video.
Yeah. So for you though, what was the big thing you took away from the I-Corps?
I believed in the business model canvas more, and the interviews I was skeptical about. I mean, I always had done it, but I didn't, get into 100 and all of that. And when you were taking it, I mean, you took it serious. You were like, we are not failing on any part of this. And you were a great leader and motivator for all of us. And when we were required to do 100. We did 150, 130,
160.
160.
Yeah, we did the 160. So they were asking us to see if we could break the record. We were getting close to the end because I think some team did 210 or something, and they're like, "Hey, you guys should go for it, right?" And we're like, just can't do it, because after a while it's just becoming an exercise in getting an interview. So the point is to learn, and I think we learned enough. But for us, I think even 160, that's I end up doing probably in total now, if I had to guess on that one topic outside the I-Corps. So I did I-Corps. I also did a course at University of Michigan, Intro to Customer Discovery. So that's a good shout out for those guys. That was a great program just to get started. I think I did 31 interviews with them. And then I did a bunch of interviews. I think I'm around 240 or something in that space. But you just need to do it because you have to understand the ecosystem, and you just have to interview people, and your interviews get more focused over time. You get better at doing them, I think, as well. I'm still learning on that because I always find, like, especially if I get like, I don't know if you have this problem, but when you get a little nervous, you start talking too much and you're not listening, right? So I always have to tell myself, let them speak, and then you just try to learn from them, and then just use like quick questions. Oh, why do you feel that way? That sort of thing.
I was comfortable interviewing because I was an auditor for so long, so it was sort of easy to just listen or get. I guess I probably led them a little bit, so I don't know. I got to look for that bias more and more. But we've done tons of interviews around here now, um, and I want to tell you the second thing that solidified something for the Fledge.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you remember we were in the old Fledge and we had the virtual reality? And who was that other man that was here? Was that your
Clark
uh
Radcliffe? Was he the engineer guy, or was he
was
an
it
engineer, or was it? Because I think I
oh,
brought two guys. There was
yeah.
Brian Decker and then Clark Radcliffe.
I think it was Clark, and he had on the virtual reality set, and we've got these like 15-year-old kids
Oh
from the
yeah,
neighborhood that are, teaching them and showing them how to use it. And I don't think they understood, that this is wasn't he was he from Yale too?
he no, he was from Michigan University or Michigan State University. He was
Uh,
a professor in mechanical engineering, so he's a smart guy. He's a pretty bright guy. Yeah, yeah.
it seems like one of them was in from Yale, though. Would it
Uh,
have been your mentor?
I can't remember
Anyways,
if Yasa came in. I can't remember that.
I think it
Maybe.
was
Yeah.
him. I think it
Oh,
was
okay.
him.
Okay, maybe.
But regardless, telling those kids, hey, you just helped a PhD guy, learn some new technology, and for
Yeah, yeah.
them, it was so what that guy listened to us. It was just something that now, as much as I can connect anybody with any mentor, it just is so important to us to just even have that quick little 5-minute mentorship. And it was reverse mentoring, which we started doing quite often now.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think there's always something you can learn, right? Like even the most advanced. So, like, I interact with some really good people, right, that are kind of high level modelers now. And then we've had this discussion. So I have kind of a COVID project that I've been working on with my one of my advisors when I was at Yale. So this guy is like a top-notch control theorist, right? So he said the same thing. Like, the fun part is learning. Like, they need to learn the system, so they need to talk to people, and the people that are really good modelers, people that can figure out how things work, they have to, I think, interact more with the users, right? So I think it's becoming a problem, maybe from the academic point of view. They're just so busy teaching courses and then grant writing papers, that they just don't have time to go and interact sometimes to find out what are the real needs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things. So I've done a whole bunch of interviews too. I don't know if I told you this. We got this USAID project, so I have a subaward on that.
Mm-hmm.
And what I ended up doing was, the crisis just hit, and they weren't sure, kind of what was happening. And we work mostly in developing countries in Africa and Southeast Asia, but we didn't know what the key problems were. So I applied all the customer discovery techniques, right? I said, let's go out and we'll just do a whole bunch of interviews. So we started interviewing, people of different backgrounds, and we quickly found out, actually, in these other countries, they weren't concerned with COVID as a health problem. They were concerned with the economic implications. So the majority of people that we were interviewing, especially the people that were at the lower status levels, were just worried about feeding themselves day to day, right? So if you're trying to teach people, to you know maintain social distance and lockdowns and stuff like that, that's not even on their radar. Like, for them, the fear of having starvation is so much greater, right? So that's a perfect example. So you switch quickly to looking at food security, right, and making sure there's like robust pathways, for them to get food and then to work as well, right? So if you're in a lab or you're sitting in your office, you're not going to know that. So you think the key thing to focus on is health, right? And then you develop all your solutions around that. But yeah, I'm more and more convinced that academics, they should be doing customer discovery interviewing.
Yeah.
Like it would be very important for them. So they design better solutions for people.
I think, sometimes it can be easy to analyze something in the lab, but you miss that whole systems thinking part of it, like all the different factors that why that analysis doesn't hold up in the real world. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah, exactly.
it's I think that's one of the reasons I love the SBIR process and the I-Core that we went through is people talk about academia being in the ivory towers and so out of touch, and to see this start to mesh together, I don't know, it was a great experience for me. I won't forget it ever. It's
That's good. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I might be doing another one. We'll see, because I have a new project that I need to understand the ecosystem. So I think I'll have to do another I-Core. So I don't know. I don't know. Like you remember, we did it, and it's so stressful when you're going through it, and they push you pretty hard. It's not a soft thing. Like if you're going to do it, you have to commit to it. But yeah, like 8 weeks, it's hardcore, and you're always stressed about getting the interviews. And, it's not simply just doing the interviews, it's finding the interviews, which takes time, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I may do another one actually with this new project that I'm working on. So, but yeah, it's valuable and it's needed, so.
Um, so what, we talked a little bit about your mission, and you probably have a personal mission, and then Sumaq Life has a mission. How would you summarize either one of those missions?
They're the same. They're the same because I have the same. I want to do impactful projects, right? I want to make an impact. So I'm in a stage now in my career. I have enough papers, publications. I've done well with that. I have some financial flexibility now. So I talked with my wife because it's sort of a family decision, but the idea was, I want to do stuff that I think is impactful. I just don't want to be doing research for the sake of doing research and publishing papers for the sake of publishing papers. So I look for projects now where I think I can, have some impact. So for me personally and the company, it's the same. The company is going to go after projects where we think we can make a dent. And if we can't, then I'll pivot to something. So the two line up, and then the other side to it is it should line up commercially too, right? If you're solving important problems, there should be some commercial potential to that, which is also important for the adoption of the technology or solutions.
Yeah. So what do you do every damn day to push that mission forward?
Yeah, it's hard because there's so many different things you have to do. It's like networking. You have to network. So I try and reach out to people in the ecosystem, get to know people. I have to fundraise. Like if we don't have funds, the funding is the grease for the wheel of change, right? So you have to go out and you have to get funding. So I've been primarily focused on non-dilutive funds from SBIRs, STTRs, and I think I'm getting more interested maybe going for private funding. But yeah, it's funding's critical. Like you can't do anything if you don't have the funds. So you have to move the needle, and to do that, you need sometimes significant funding to do that, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's the key thing. Like you have to, and then the other thing, like I struggle with, and maybe you can give me some insight, is trying to maintain focus, right? Because when we work on these projects, you come across stuff and you're like, that'd be interesting to go after, and then it's easy to start pivoting too much. Like some people have the problem, they don't pivot when they should, and then they end up wasting lots of time, right? They should have abandoned something. I think now I've kind of gone the other way where like maybe I'm pivoting too much, but I'm looking for that really strong, compelling use case to move forward with, for my projects. But there's a potential I could be pivoting too much, right? So
Right.
you have to kind of be careful with that. But yeah, that's in my day. I'm always writing. I have to write a lot. And I'm always writing grants. And then I'm also trying to network. And I find the networking stuff really interesting because the bigger your network, the more interesting the projects can become because
Yeah.
there'll be like resources you can get that you don't have that someone else has. And then that becomes a good partnership. And then if you apply for a grant, the team looks stronger. So yeah, just networking probably.
Yeah, to us, that's the power of diversity. Whether however you define those characteristics of diversity, but that the different mindsets, the different ways of looking at things, always gives you more opportunity.
Yeah, for sure.
So we daisy chain the shows together, and yesterday on the show I had a young man named Alan who started Root of the Vine, and he's doing urban farming and trying to get urban farming adopted more and more by people in our communities. He has a question for you, and that is, do you ever see yourself partnering with big tech? And I think there might have been a part, will you still have the autonomy to be impactful, maybe?
Yeah, so the idea with big tech is they can help scale things. So for me, like I'm very interested in the R&D aspect. So sometimes these big tech firms, they have a lot of inertia. They can't be as maybe agile as a small startup, right? So we could be more risky, and we can pivot a lot quicker, which sometimes maybe is not a good thing. But we have the ability to, do a lot of sort of research and development, get something to show that it's feasible. And then, as a small business, I may not have the capacity to roll it out, especially, if you get involved in something like therapeutics, there's regulatory reimbursement, all that stuff, it's not a simple thing. And there are tons of, pitfalls along the way. So these bigger companies, you can partner with them and they have it kind of already worked out. So it just depends, like for me, like I'm happy with early exits. Like I enjoy kind of the R&D side. And then if I can pass it off, to some group that has the capacity, to run with it, I'm happy. So I interview companies like Philips, and had discussions with those guys. This other project I'm getting into is going to be more like therapeutics, like drugs and stuff like that. So that's not my area of like expertise per se. So I'll need to have somebody that I can work with probably, but I'll be doing interviews around that just to see if there's potential partnerships. And then it helps me get the grants because I could say, yeah, this clearly I'm good at doing this part of it. And then I have like a letter of commitment from, this other company, that can take it the rest of the way. And that really looks good, I think, in the grants. So always you try to have a good team, and you have to have like a strategy to take it all the way to, the end. And you may take it part way and then hand it off.
Yeah, that's great advice. Tomorrow on the show, I have Don W. He's a tech guy. And what question would you like to pass on to Don?
Yeah, so it's around talent acquisition. So one of the things, to be successful, like when you talk to people, some of the key things for them to be successful are the team. And, the team has to look strong. I just mentioned, if you're trying to get funding, you have to have a good team. But I struggle with this a little bit because we were looking at one point for, IT support, to develop some remote patient monitoring technology. And it was really difficult. Like I couldn't find anybody, locally. It seems like they're all working with other groups, So I think I have the impression, like if you go, to the West Coast or maybe in the East Coast, it's easier to find these people that are interested to work in a startup. So there are different types of people. I think if you want to have somebody, who wants to be in the startup life, it's a lot of excitement, it's kind of fun, fast moving, but it's the insecurity, right? So it's
Yeah.
sometimes hard to get good people, to help on the projects.
Yeah.
So
I,
where does he find them? Yeah, how does he get them?
I was going to ask you the same question. So, actually, the last message he sent me was, "Do you know any software engineers?" Um, so he's looking. He's pretty desperate if he's asking me. No,
Yeah,
that's not
yeah,
true.
yeah. It's hard. So for us, like I end up, what you could do is team up with a company, right? So you remember there was a group, Emo Health, that
Yeah.
we were working with. Yeah, so we worked with their group, on a project. So you could do that. You can kind of team up with guys that are startups that are maybe
Mhm.
further along than you, and collaborate on projects. So for me, there's like we've actually had discussions on this because I was trying to figure it out. So I was thinking, wow, you can work with students, right? And have some students help with the project. So just from my past experience being a researcher, students are good, but you have to really oversee what they do and guide them. Some students are a lot better than others. Like Connor, for instance, who is with us, he was great. And then I have another person who's working with me right now, Ahmed. But I knew these guys really well, right? Because they were in our lab, so they were great students. So I was very eager to pull them in. But in software design, I didn't know anybody. Like it's just something I never used. So I talked with Brian Deckard at Emo Health
Yeah.
about this because the problem is if you go with the guys, like if I go with Brian's group wants to know exactly what it is. It's not trial and error. It's like, okay, we'll have a contract and we'll deliver, but you have to tell me exactly what you want to deliver. But often we don't know what it is. Like we have an idea. Like all these projects, you're always sort of moving around, like trying to figure your way forward. So I need somebody that can do some things like kind of exploratory.
Hmm.
Um, so we kind of talked about it because he had some good insight. He said, yeah, maybe, just hire these students, and like students aren't that expensive and you can try some of these, like, what if we did this way? And, but basically what he said is, yeah, you take those students and they do things really quickly, right? Like they'll move fast, but they may not understand like the importance of, documenting in their code so that, the next person behind them
Yeah.
knows what's going on. So he said what he does is basically rewrite it. They show how they do it, and then he'll go in and clean it up so it's like professional grade, I guess, coding.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about that. So, but I think it's good to pull in students. Like I should do more of that, and I think there's like good opportunities for students to kind of learn. Like entrepreneurship's kind of a vague thing until you start doing it, and
Hmm.
you really see what it's like and whether or not you like to do it. So I think a lot of people have this romantic idea of being an entrepreneur, but they don't realize, like, try to do an I-Corps, see if you like it.
Yeah.
Like if you do that and you like it, and it's like, yeah, it's probably for you, right? But
Uh-huh.
I think the students, they may not get that exposure, with a course. Maybe they have a, some thing they're doing. I don't know. I've never took like an entrepreneurship course at university. I'm doing it all on the fly.
Yeah.
But that could be an idea, maybe like hook up with the students.
Yeah. I, we wrote an app for returning citizens called Power and Passion, and we still think about should we try to do this as a digital therapeutic because the Department of Corrections wants us to get a little bit more evidence to show, is the behavior really changing? And then we've got tons of advocacy saying, well, let's use it for substance use. Let's use it for homelessness, and it's a pretty cool little system we're starting to build.
Yeah, that's a question I'll ask you. Maybe I have, and you saw this with the I-Corps program. You remember there's this one team that had great tech, like awesome, and it was like like just great. Everybody was totally behind it, but they couldn't go forward, right? Because there was this issue of they got to prove feasibility to get reimbursement codes, right? Because if you don't have the reimbursement codes, it doesn't get adopted. But I struggle with that too, because, to get that data to show that it's, effective, those are expensive,
Mhm.
projects to run. So, yeah, often, like, now what I'm doing is I'm picking projects where I know I can do the feasibility in phase one, the SBIR. So there's projects that I think are perfectly valid. There's strong scientific support for doing it. There's strong commercial, support for moving forward, but it's just going to be too expensive to do the feasibility. So I can't get it. I can't get
Mhm.
past, the reviewers. So for you guys, like, how are you going to get the evidence, like, to
Yeah.
get people to jump on board with the project?
Well, we've got a functioning piece of software right now with about 250 users in the ecosystem of it, and we're starting to try to figure out how to do A/B testing within those users. So we're doing a new calendar feature. We're only going to let half of them see it, and then see if there is an increase in getting to your appointments, which seems obvious to us,
Yeah,
but they
yeah.
want to see the evidence, right?
Mhm.
And we're still adopting. We're still we have some sponsors that help generate revenue. It's free to the users that have gotten out of prison recently. Well, it's free to all users like that, and then it just incentivizes them to comply with their orders. And the more they comply, the less we'll have recidivism. And we give them like a coupon, a Fledge coin, and they can spend that on anything at the Fledge. They can get Lyft rides, they can buy food. Uh, so lots of different things to reward them. We say we're putting the carrot back into the judicial system. It's
Yeah,
all stick.
yeah, that sounds good. So the like the things that you're using to determine success, are they from your interviews with people that you ask them, like, for you to adopt this, what do you need to see? And then they'll say,
Yes.
yeah, we need to see that. So then you design your feasibility studies around that.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
we have two, we've got, well, not two, we've got several customer segments now. So we've got the ex-offenders, we've got the parole officers, we've got the offender success, which is different than parole, like really getting them off their feet. You've got the general community, where there's a lot of stigma, don't have them living in my neighborhood, type of thing. So but it all comes together through interviews like that, and
yeah,
interviewing different types of players in the ecosystem.
yeah. It sounds like yeah, it would be very valuable because it's a big problem, right? You have
Yeah,
a lot of people, and there's a lot more of them. I think, yeah, it's stuff like that. I think makes a lot of sense, right? So um, it's like that though, right, Jerry? Like, things
yeah,
that make perfect sense, you're like, oh, it should be easy to get implemented, right? But it always seems harder than you think, right? There's always some barrier that you don't think about, right? But that's where you do these interviews and you figure out, okay, well, maybe it won't work in this particular use case, but if I pivot a little bit to this or
yeah.
shift, then it's a go. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So have you guys
And
had to shift at all, or like your initial idea kind of went through?
um, no, I think that we used a real agile approach when we were developing the software. So our general theory was carrots will be more effective than sticks. You know,
Mhm.
incentivizing this compliance rather than trying to beat the compliance into people or punish it into them will
Mhm.
be more effective. And then we just did little small things like here's a map of all the resources where you can find a job, where you can live, where you can get substance use help, and just started adopting people along those lines. And as we learn, they teach us what they want next, and we just kind of keep building it that way. So we're kind of right there with them as they're interviewing. That's our features that we're adding. But what we don't know is if we go back to our overall experiment, if you will, are we hitting the right things right now, and do we really have evidence that this lowers the probability that they're going to go back to prison?
Yeah, and then do you guys have first customers that you're working with, like that you can go and say, yeah, if you meet this goal or this milestone, I'll use the technology. Do you have things lined up like that, or yeah,
Um, no, we do not. Um, well, it's sort of. The MDOC has talked about doing some funding behind it if we can show them uh, that efficacy,
mm,
or that it will be effective.
mm,
Uh, yeah. And then
okay,
there's a new group we just met, but I don't want to mention them yet, that might come in with us, and they might do the app in a different state, but use the same software. Uh, so yeah,
yeah, no, sounds good. Yeah, I like that project. I think that's yeah, that'd be impactful.
yeah, it's going to be fun, or it has been fun. We're about a year old, and we make a little bit of money, but nothing more. We can't even pay our developer what he deserves to be paid.
Yeah,
Yeah,
these things they take like yeah, usually you donate your time, right, and energy early on, and then yeah, it's not until later you get your return. But yeah, it's yeah, I think that's that's with you pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, and you're just getting it done, right? So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you have to be you have to figure a way to move forward. So yeah, that sounds good though. Yeah.
So recently, I added a question to the set of interviews or interview topics. What is happiness to you, and are you happy?
Yeah, so COVID-19, right? So COVID-19 hits and we're like, okay, well, everything changed pretty quickly for everybody. And, I think like the good thing is you figure out what you don't like sometimes when you get put in a new situation, right? So one thing for us that we knew we really enjoyed traveling. So for me, happiness is getting exposed to different cultures, right? And you get that feeling of being alive when you travel. So we really, really like traveling. So we we discovered, if you could do this remote working, it gives you the opportunity to work in different places. So for me, I think what makes me happy is having flexibility, having the freedom, to go maybe and work abroad, and still work on projects. The one problem with NSF funding and NIH funding, I can't work abroad, so that kind of limits that. But my wife and I were talking like we'd like to go to the beach. I love being at the beach, and I love being in the water. Body surfing or boogie boarding. Yeah, it's fun. Like you come out with a smile on your face, right? So for us, the goal would be to be able maybe to work remotely and then, go to places which are new, interesting, work for, maybe a month or two and then get to know the place really well. And yeah, just do that. So I think my wife calls it being a digital nomad.
Mm,
So yeah,
yeah.
I like that idea, but that came about because of COVID-19, and we had to actually go to Peru for 3 months to deal with like a family issue. So we were there, and then we end up spending time at the beach, and then we're like, wow, great if we could do this, on a regular basis, maybe. So my big hope is a lot of these companies will allow workers to work remotely, and I think the experiment showed that it's effective. Like people are just as productive. So we sort of talked about getting good talent, right? You can get good talent if you give them flexibility to work where they want to work. So I see that as a potential benefit for places like Michigan, where maybe there's not that many IT guys, right? But maybe they wouldn't mind working, for like a startup or something in Michigan. And so I hope I see that trend go forward because, yeah, then you'll have a more rich life. Like you can go and travel. And I just think it'll be better, for everybody if they can get more exposure to different cultures. And if you're there for 2 months or something, you really get to know people, right? So it's not like you're a tourist just like passing through. So for me, happiness is getting to know other cultures and feeling that sense of being alive, right? When you're in a new place. So
Yeah. So we forgot one of your expertise.
Oh, what's that? Oh, I think I know what you're gonna say. Yeah,
So, I always say the word wrong. Is it a pesco sour?
pisco. Yeah, pisco
Pisco
sour.
sour.
Yeah.
So, what's a pisco sour?
So pisco sour is a Peruvian national drink. So it's what I call an icebreaker. Like you go to someone's house and they often, in the past, they used to do it more, but you go to someone's house and the first thing they do is give you a pisco sour, which is a really potent drink. So the ratio is, just to give you an idea, it's like three of this. Pisco is a brandy. It's from distilled grapes. So it's 3 parts pisco, 1 part lemon or lime. No, sorry, lime, but it's a special lime. So I'll give the audience a secret. If you're making a pisco sour in North America, use key limes because you need the acidity. In Peru, the limes they're a lot more acid. So here, use a key lime. So it's 3 parts pisco, 1 part key lime, and then 1 part. You could just use white sugar if you want, but there's also like syrup, simple syrup. So when I go to Peru, I always bring back special syrup that's used to make pisco sours. But I would guess I used to have a lot more, but I think I probably have one of the largest collections of pisco in Michigan.
Mm.
So I have lots of different types. There's lots of different brands. There's high-end pisco where you just drink it straight. And then there's other ones that you use for making pisco sours. So, I forgot to mention the last thing is egg white. So some people get turned off by that because they think it's dangerous, right? So we had a party once with a colleague, with Jacek Chowicki, who is my PhD supervisor. So he loves them and his wife loves them, right? So I said, yeah, let's have a pisco sour tasting because I have all these different types of pisco. So let's see how they are. And I'm going to change the recipe a little bit on different ones. So you can tell I'm a researcher, right? Like I'm experimenting with the recipe. So he had his sister-in-law, I guess, was there. And then she was like, I don't want to drink because it's got like egg white in it. So I said, that's fine. I'll drink it. So by the end, she was drinking every drink I made. It was a fun night. But they're just just great drinks. So people so whenever we have dinner parties, usually we invite people over. We'll introduce a pisco sour, and then it's a good way, like just kind of to break the ice. And so, yeah, but it's a good drink. Yeah, really good.
So, as we wrap up, is there anything you want to, any websites you want to promote or have people take a look at or anything?
Yeah, I'm thinking, like from my perspective, I think people, if they're interested in getting funding, they should, look at SBIR funding. So there's like an SBIR website, and it's a small business innovation research website. I think anybody that has some interest in, going that route, it would be good for them to learn a little bit about how the government supports research and development in this country. So there's a lot of things that don't have bipartisan support. The SBIR program is one of them. It has like both Republicans and Democrats love this program. And it's such a good return on investment, right? So I think people that are interested in, non-dilutive funds, which means they don't take a piece of your company, should check out, those websites, the SBIR website. And then the other thing, if you're interested in that sort of stuff, you can always build partnerships with the universities. So if you have something, that you need some expertise in, you could talk to, MSU or U of M or some other universities to see if they have some interest. So I'll give you a hidden secret. Researchers at those universities are dying to get funding. So if they can get funding through an SBIR, they'll be happy to do it.
SBIR.gov is the website, the official one for SBIRs, and I typed it in, and then there was a press release about that prize we won, so I shared that too.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, congratulations on that. That's good.
Thank you. So, what would you like to take us out with? I mean, what you just did was spectacular.
No, I wanted to finish with this because I think entrepreneurship takes many forms. So, there's stuff I think that I do maybe is a bit more technical and, has, a bit more like research behind it. But, I think what you do is like really important because I think you like the stuff that you do. I'm always impressed with how you engage, especially groups that normally may not go as entrepreneurs. Like they may see it as like some abstract thing, right? That's difficult. But I was always impressed. And then like when I brought people with me to come see the Fledge, they were like Clark Radcliffe mentioned this. He goes, yeah, that's the right type of style, like for bringing in younger people. You don't want to have a sterile environment. You want to have stuff that's like all over the place, and it's kind of like cool and hip, right? So I think incubators, different types of incubators are suited better for certain types of entrepreneurs. But I think what you do, it feels a very, very important need, which is, to get especially these young entrepreneurs interested, or people that may not necessarily think they could be an entrepreneur, and show them that, yeah, you can do it. Like this is a process, like they have to do the right process, like an I-course type thing where you do customer discovery is really important. But, like I don't see that everywhere. Like no one's going to go to a university-based incubator, right? That's maybe a high school student. It's just not accessible to them. So there's a huge need to have accessibility for people that have interests in entrepreneurship from maybe diverse groups. So I think what you do is awesome, and I always told you that. Like I'm always super impressed with what you do. So I think you have a very valuable service to the community.
Thank you very much for those kind words, Peter. And I don't want to not reiterate again. You've impacted us with the projects you let us be involved with, and I have a lot of respect for you too, and I love what you do, and I love your attitude about it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was really great talking with you today. This is my first podcast, by the way, so hopefully it went well.
It was fantastic.
Oh, great. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, you made it
All
pretty
right.
easy. So, okay, it was nice talking to you.
All right, everyone. Every damn day at 2. Tomorrow we'll have Don talking about technical stuff, and tune in every day. We will see you later. See you, Peter.